Hey everybody, it's Jim of Animateducated, and today you're going to meet Joe Murray, the creator of Rocco's Modern Life, Camp Lazlo, and Let's Go Luna, just to name a few. He's living in Belgium now and still makes independent films. So here he is, Joe Murray.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm noticing your animation celebration poster in
Oh
the
yeah, yeah, there it
that's from
is.
the 80s.
It is.
Wow.
So you made a film, The Chore, which
So that's why you want to play with.
won a Student Academy Award.
Yeah.
And you won it the year after I did because I won it. I just happen to have it here. The, I carry this around all
I
the
have
time.
one of those.
Yes, the big hunk
Yes.
of wood award, right?
Yes, the Hunk of Wood
Yeah,
Award. Yes.
yeah. And someone said, "Oh, do you know Saul Bass designed that award?" And I'm like,
Is
"Wow,
that
oh,
right?
okay."
I
So
didn't know
yeah,
that.
so and
I didn't.
then you won student was it Nissan Central Award, right?
Focus Film Award. Yes.
Yeah, there it is.
I got stopped in the airport for bringing that through the security.
Uh-oh.
They,
Did
they
they
thought it
take it
was
away?
something. No.
No.
They said, "What is this?"
There's
It's an award.
like there's drugs in here, bud. Let's go. I think this unscrews.
It just looked odd, I think, on the X-ray,
Well,
whatever.
yeah. Well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, it
Yeah,
does
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
look could be
Yes.
a yeah, giant gun,
Yeah,
with a couple bullets missing. I don't
that's
know.
interesting. Okay, so you have two of the same awards. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I first started in animation, there was no reference, or at least that I could find. So I took these old Looney Tunes videos, and on our VCR we had a little step button on the remote, and I would just step by step, and I would draw the walk cycles. I still have them, the walk cycles of Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and Porky Pig and Elmer Fudd. I have all these different walk cycles, and that's how I learned
That's
walk cycles.
great. Yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
sometimes I look at the Richard Williams ones, and when I'm doing my film, if I'm like getting stuck on a certain walk cycle, and I go, "Oh, this is too complicated."
yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
go
he
back to
did.
the Looney Tunes ones because some of
Yeah.
it is a little too much uh, weight distribution that's not really necessary for what I'm doing. But The Illusion of Life came out.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
remember I had a back issue. I had a ruptured disc, and I was in bed, and so I ended up reading that book cover to cover
Wow.
as part of my.
Made your disc get better. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what am I going to do?
Yeah, right,
It
right.
was like a month I was supposed to be in bed. What am I going to do? Our college was a community college, which it didn't have much funding really, and um, and we were kind of the bastard child of the film department. We got their hand-me-down cameras, and so we were lucky if they actually worked. And and then so when I was doing adding sound to the chore, it was like we had a little rigged up mag track machine and a reel to reel, and we had to jiggle this at the same time we were pressing this button and trying to get it all to work. It was crazy. It was just very, and then remember like cutting negs, like cutting negatives and
No,
all that stuff is just so
I
crazy. We had this really rickety old camera stand, and when I did my film, My Dog Zero, which was I had all the cells painted and such. I wanted to use a better camera. We had a Mitchell camera that I wanted to use, but we didn't have anything to rig it up on. So I found a guy who had an old like it must have been like 1940s hydraulic camera stand that was like cast iron. And he said, if you can move it, you can have it. And so I actually we found someone who had a forklift and a truck, and the animation department was in the basement of the Dianza auditorium, which was used for theater and such. So there were some rooms down there that they used for storage. So they had a freight elevator that went down to the bottom. So we moved it in with a forklift in the freight elevator, and we brought it in and into one of the rooms, and that's what it was. The hydraulics were still working, and a platinum, and so we shot the film on it, and then when I left, nobody could move it, and it's still there. It's still in the basement of De Anza College because after Rocco became somewhat known, and uh, De Anza was saying, "Whoa, we've got a great animation department. Look who came out of our animation department," and they actually gave the animation department its own building above ground, and they had a lot of money suddenly, so they moved out of the basement, and they had nice digs there. But yeah, the basement still has that camera stand. So it's
Wow.
the old know-how, what we did to make our films. I don't know. I was just talking to somebody recently about this because we were talking about how the creator of a show is treated. Um, when I had Rocco, and then later with Lazlo, the creator was a little more revered, and had a lot more say. I mean, on Rocco, I basically ran almost the whole production. I was even its line producer at one point, which is not recommended, but I was a control freak. But I was like trying to keep it from the corporate, greedy. Well, not greedy. It was TV was seeping into the Nickelodeon machine, and I was like holding Rocco, trying to protect it from it. Um, but then later on, I think they got to where we're not going to let the creator have this much power, and they slowly just started just pushing the creator aside. It's like the creator can give you the idea, and then we'll take it from here. Thank you very much. So to a point where if like in the case of Chris Savino, if something happens, you just kind of get rid of the creator, and it's still going strong. And obviously, SpongeBob is still going strong. Um, and Steve had decided to leave after like 4 seasons, 5 seasons, and they still said, "Yeah, we're not stopping this juggernaut." So yeah, so it's a different world, and so yeah, and the deals got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and it was interesting because when I did Static Cling, the special for Netflix, the Rocco special, Nickelodeon wanted me to change my deal to the deal that they're doing now with creators, which is awful, from my deal I had with Rocco, which is great. Like they don't do those deals anymore. And that's that's not going to happen. I actually had to walk from it. I said, I'm not giving up this deal. This is a great deal. It earns me lots of money every year. So why am I going to do that? So they finally caved in.
But you're living in Belgium now, and how
Yeah.
long have you been there?
I think it's been like 6 years now. We came in right before COVID. So yeah. And now, yeah, so then I'm living on a farm. I
Hmm.
bought a farm. It turned out nice. It's good. And I'm converted a stable into a studio, and this is where I work.
And
Yeah.
so you're working on some new films now?
I'm currently working on another film. It's taken longer because it's a different kind of a method that I'm doing with the color and such. So I think it might be another year before it's done. So.
This is from Napoleon, and he writes, if adult animation wasn't as shocking and controversial in the 90s before Adult Swim, where do you think you would be in your career?
Yeah. Um, Yeah, it was never my intention to have a career in television. So uh, I would have just kept making independent film. I wasn't into what was being done in television. But after if Nickelodeon had started doing its stuff, I would have. But it would have to be edgy. Like when first saw Ren and Stimpy, I thought, oh, there's a place for my stuff. I don't know. So
Hmm.
yeah, who knows where your career would go? I had no plan on it being like that.
Hmm.
So.
So this is from Julissa, who says, "What inspired you to create Camp Lazlo?"
I was doing some children's books after Rocco, and there was an idea I had for a children's book about campers. And uh, Linda Saminsky had gone over to Cartoon Network from Nickelodeon, and she's the one who brought Rocco in. So we had connected a bit, and she said, "Why don't you pitch us something over here?" And I said, "I don't know." Uh, but but I put a proposal together for Camp Lazlo, and I started liking it. I originally was called Three Beans. That's in my book, and then Linda said that sounds like a salad, so we're gonna change. But a lot of it was based not only on my scouting experience, but the the place where it happens is modeled after Lake Tahoe, where my family would go every summer, and so it was kind of based on that lake and that world. And I also wanted something that was happening in nature because there was too much happening in this tech world that was emerging. So I realized in Weeblos that I wasn't good at earning badges, and I didn't like the whole structure of earning badges, and that was one of the reasons why I didn't go into Boy Scouts. But it's funny because the original concept in Camp Lazlo was that they had to earn a badge in order for them to leave camp, and they could never do it. So they were just permanently stuck at camp with Lumpus. And but then I realized that was a little limiting, and so I let go of that. But that was directly from my own badge experience. It was so. And then my daughter goes, my daughter goes into Girl Scouts, right? And she starts doing the badge thing, and I'm cracking up because their scoutmaster's like, okay, we're gonna get our cooking camp cooking badge, and they get those dehydrated bags of add boiling water, and you have chili, and they add boiling water to it, and they go, okay, here, yeah, we everybody now has their cooking badge. I'm like, okay, this is really messed up. Okay. I don't know what you're learning. You weren't even in a camp when you did this. You were in the park.
Oh, here's a good one. Who is your favorite character you've ever created or worked on? Or also, who is the character you wish you could have redesigned or improved?
Hmm. Yeah. Interesting question. Good question.
All right.
Um, Lumpus was Scoutmaster Lumpus was one of my favorite characters to write for. I remember I just loved writing for him. I connected with him so much. And I don't know whether it was because of his attitude towards, yeah, I just don't care about anything. Oh, those kids, I don't like kids. No, I like kids though, but I don't know. He was just really fun to write for. And I like the characters that are unhinged. In Let's Go Luna, the one I did for PBS, they had a Fabuloso who ran the circus is really unhinged also, and I loved writing for him. Um, the hardest characters to write for were Rocco and Lazlo, I think, because they were more the center of the hurricane. But I was never happy with Rocco's design, really, and I kept changing it. because I came from independent film where I didn't have to teach anybody how to animate my characters. And when you get into volume animation, where an overseas company is doing the animation, which we had a company in Korea, they were actually a pretty good studio, um, but they had a hard time animating Rocco, and I kept trying to make it more volume friendly. I changed its design a few times, and it was driving everybody nuts because they were, and I had to give classes to the studio who worked in LA with me and in Korea. I had to give classes to them on how to draw and animate Rocco because it was very difficult. And then there was that whole thing with the color of Rocco, which I was also not happy with. So uh, I just think, I mean, but now he's, he's who he is, and you're used to him now. But it was just difficult. There were a lot of cheats involved. Let's say that in animating him.
Let's see. This is from Amy, and she says, "What advice would you give someone who wants to create their own anime show, and what kind of things should I do to avoid doing?"
What kind of things should you avoid doing?
Yeah,
Well,
I
they
guess.
should definitely read that book if that's something that my book, because I talk
Okay.
a lot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, do's and don'ts and what you can avoid. There's a long list of things I learned over the years working in television, but like I said, the landscape has changed so much. I don't know what's pertinent anymore. So just there's a different chemistry to creating characters that live in a volume environment. Um, the character arcs are different. You have to kind of always come back to status quo at the end of every episode so you don't mess with the chemistry. So if you have a chemistry with the other characters and you're creating storylines, it just, so there's not, I mean, although some animated series have been able to develop to have their characters grow. But Bart Simpson is still a kid, even though he should be, what, 35 years old by now? Um, yeah. So that's one of the things. But there's, like I said, there's lots to do. And it's different with the production, how the productions are being done now. I think I said this in my book about that. It's kind of like, if you have a chain of Pizza Huts and you have a certain way that you make the pizza, this pizza and that pizza, you send instructions and you have to make up that book of instructions that everybody needs to follow. It kind of takes out the spontaneity of a lot of things, but that's really the way that it has to be set out when you're in a volume environment. I don't
Okay.
like volume. I don't like volume. But independent film, you don't, I mean, I still have model sheets that I draw for myself,
Hmm.
but you're drawing them for yourself and not for somebody else. And, they're just the basic shapes and outlines that you use to make sure you're keeping the same. But I used to hate model sheets, and when I did Rocco, the overseas studio would take the model sheets and they would take our storyboards and bring everything back to model, and which killed it. It killed the drawings. We had amazing directors and artists on Rocco and all the shows. And so I had a little stamp. I was like, they made fun of my stamps because I had a lot of stamps. I would, I would stamp, uh, use this as a layout and not change the layout. So I would stamp it if I liked the pose, and even if it was a little off model, I wanted the pose. And I had to instruct the overseas studio to not mess with it. But that also happened actually on Luna because we have this Canadian studio uh, that was doing the animation, and I would do. I edited the Leicas myself, the animatics, and I would redraw them a lot of times from what we had some storyboard people. And and then they were in Toon Boom. They were using Toon Boom, and they had preset rigs, right? And they would have somebody go through the storyboard and draw everything over again, trying to back into the rigs that they had. And they would kill it. They would totally kill it. And I would get so pissed off. I would get really, and and I would redraw. So I would redraw from the what the directors did, send it to Canada. They would redraw what I did, send it back to me. I would redraw what they did. It's kind of crazy, but good people. I'm just saying, you're always running up against that budget thing, especially on Luna because it was a PBS show. So you know, that's a
Yeah,
whole circus trick in itself.
yeah. So, what do you think of the difference between hand-drawn animation and the puppeted Toon Boom kind of rigged animation that they do now?
It's totally different. It's completely different. But you know, we kind of developed kind of a hybrid on Luna where we were able to go a little back and forth. They did some hand-drawn stuff. They weren't always true to the rigs, but then there was somebody who was also drawing rigs, updating the models and trying to keep up with what we were doing with our storyboards because we were kind of treating it like because we were still we didn't have scripts still. I think it was the first show PBS ever did, maybe the only show that didn't have scripts. And we would just do an outline and then go straight to storyboard. So we were trying to utilize the medium of animation. And to do that, it's not just talking, it's not like Family Guy where it's just a mouth moving a mile a minute and they're trying to cram as much dialogue into um, there was actual action and showing the story rather than just telling the story. So there were some things that needed to be done, and the studio I think lost a lot of money on on Luna because I kind of pushed him way over budget, and but it's a good show.
How do you balance staying motivated to draw for yourself versus for work? I want to improve fast, but it can feel overwhelming to force myself into drawing, into overdrawing. So,
Um, it's just a matter of whether you drawing for me is a love, and I do it every single day. And it's not so like exercise, where I'm not so big on exercise, but I have to do it. Whereas but drawing to me is not difficult to to do every day. I just saw something where Picasso would create an artwork every single day of his life. He did one. And sometimes it was really fantastic, sometimes it wasn't. But that was something that he did every single day. And that's why Picasso's Picasso. But it is a discipline to try and make that space for yourself. And yeah, I have to protect my time here in the studio. I have a sign that I put up that says I'm busy. And because the kids can be here. Sometimes I go pick up the kids from school, but um, you know, the wife, the in-laws, the animals. I have a pony that walks around. She came into my studio today. Um, so yeah,
I,
lots of visitors. So you have to like make your time and say, I'm doing it. I'm doing this, get away, turn the phone off, turn the screen off, and just do it.
I mean, it's kind of like a writer writing in a journal every day, doesn't matter what it is, just as long as it keeps writing and coming up with idea, whatever. Because some of that stuff will lead to other things.
My best work is in the morning. Um, yeah, like between 8 or 9 to lunch, and then that's when I get like that's when I schedule like uninterrupted. This is all I'm doing, and then the afternoon is a little more flexible. Um, if I need to run errands or whatever, uh, but I'll still get more work in the afternoon. But it's just I think it's just a matter of how much it lights you up, right?
Hmm?
It matters on how passionate you are about it.
And you have this master classes coming up in January. What yeah, you've advertised it a little bit on I think Instagram, things like that.
Yeah. So this is the second time I've done a master class because the first one was when the book came out and I did a master class on creating a show. But this is all on just independent film, animated film. But I talk about that in one of the lessons in the class about creating characters. And to me, and this has always been, even in the shows, the character needs to be in service to the story and the concept of whatever you're doing. And you kind of start with that um, because you want it's kind of like an audition, in live action where you kind of have an idea of what the character is supposed to be, what their role is within your story or your film or whatever. And then you start finding the personality of it. And so I would just draw a lot, starting to know what the personality is of the character. And the character starts coming out on its own a lot of times. You start living it and you find yourself like making the facial movements of what you're trying to draw. And so you start taking into consideration all of the personality aspects of what you're doing. So if this character has, their backstory is they're kind of beaten down, maybe they're a blue collar worker that doesn't like their job or whatever. So they're kind of worn, they're kind of hunched over, they're kind of weary, You bring that all into account. And you have a happy character, maybe they're well fed, maybe they're like, they've got their posture is completely different. Their style, their shape is completely different. And so you play around with all of that and you let it try to organically emerge, to find itself. And if you're doing an ensemble cast, if you have a few characters on the screen at the same time, I like to have variance in their sizes and their shapes, so your eye knows who's who and who's doing what action, and uh, and so you make them very clear in the way that they're designed, so that you can see all the action uh, going on with them. The silhouetting, that's all known with animation to be able to see things clearly. But the most is the emotion and the eyes. The eyes are very important. The eyes are, I always like to have so much expression coming from the eyes.
And you say you're not looking for people that, want likes and, all that stuff. You want something that has a heart that you're like, I really want to get this done. How do I do it? Or whatever.
Yeah.
How many people are you looking for to be in the class and how long are the classes?
But for 3 weeks, you get 6 lessons and you get three Zoom classes. And the way that it's structured is to kind of bring somebody through the whole process. And the way that I do it, there's so much information out there available. and everybody's got their own way of doing things, and you can get so much, but I kind of link it to, you can go to so many different types of grocery stores or the butcher or your garden, and you can gather all this food, but then you need to cook it. You need to make a meal out of it, and how you do it sometimes is your own preferences, right? So I kind of look at the information that you can get out there as kind of you know, the pork chop from the store, and you bring it home. How are you going to cook that pork chop? Are you going to make it, spicy? Are you going to make it like this? Or you make it like that? So what I try and focus on is how to find what your personal taste is, what your personal story is, what you're about, and funnel it through as an artistic piece rather than a commercial piece. Not to say that things happen and it becomes a commercial piece as possible, but to auteur as much as you can, to focus on what makes you laugh, what makes you or makes emotion in you, rather than what you think will make emotion on YouTube or even even the festivals. Because I actually found myself after I did Fiego, some of the festivals that I really wanted to get into, I didn't get into. And I thought, oh, it's because Viego's not like this and it's not like that. And I would, for a split second, start thinking, well, I can make my next film a little bit more like that, but that's not good thinking. That's not artistic. That's not a creative decision. That's a ego decision. I want to get into that festival. I'm going to do this. I want 1 million likes. I'm going to do this. So that's what I'm looking for. But I understand it's there's a lot of people out of work, and there's a lot of financial situations with it. But I really feel like the skills that I'm offering are something that can be carried out in many different forms and many different levels of the industry, and also for your own films. An independent film is what led me to TV. Steve Hillenberg, I found him at a film festival in Canada as an independent filmmaker, and I talked him into going in television. I dragged him in, kicking and screaming. So, these things happen. And I think that when you're creating something from your own gut, from your own self, that people will gravitate to it because it's what you have to say yourself rather than you doing what you think somebody else wants to hear. That's my spiel.
Okay.
I think it's a very good investment, and
Okay.
uh, skills and ways of thinking creatively. I think that will last a lifetime. But it's a small class. I'm probably going to cut it off at 30. Yeah. So uh, I'll be able to spend quality time with each person,
And
each
how
artist.
how many hours or would it be? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
per
as many
day?
hours as you want to put into it. That's the way I
Oh,
structured it this
oh,
time.
okay.
Because because sometimes it's like, I don't know if I have the time to do this or whatever. You put the time in that you feel right. I scheduled it so that it would come in to the winter break for college students in case, they wanted to do it during that time. Um, but it's really basically let's learn the lessons now. Take it to where you want to take it in the time frame that you want to take it to. And then come back and let me know what you did and share it. So that's kind of the way. It's not one of these things like in the last masterclass gave assignments, and I said this is do then, and this concept is do then, and a lot of there were still a lot of students there were, and they're saying I'm having trouble doing this, and it was causing stress. I don't want stress, although there is something to having structure that, if you are having trouble being a self-starter, or that's something. So You mentioned something about that sometimes it's hard for your students to finish films, and I found that with students mostly because they set their sights too high. You know, they get excited about something and they bite off more than they can chew, and they get tired of chewing, basically. What happens? Um, I say, unless you're a seasoned animator, um, and a seasoned filmmaker, which we have a couple of those. If you're not used to doing these films, start out very simple, and because it's better to have a short finished film than a long unfinished film or overly uh, ambitious. Take the Richard Williams Thief and the Cobbler approach.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Joe Murray. I want to thank Joe again for coming on Animated Educated and telling us all about what he's been doing and what he's doing next. Remember, he is giving a master class this January. If you're interested in it, I'll leave some information below. Also, there's a link to his book and creating animated cartoons with character. It's a really good book. Check it out. It's free. It's below. If you enjoyed this interview in any way, you can press that button right there to subscribe, or you can take a look. I got other videos in interviews, things like that below, or here's a couple of things you might be interested in as well. And we'll see you next time on Animated Educated.